President Trump is having a series of high-stakes meetings with European allies in Belgium. He is about to meet with France's newly elected president, Emmanuel Macron, after talking with other leaders at the European Union headquarters. Margaret Brennan is traveling with the president in Brussels, where he will soon attend the first NATO gathering. Margaret, good morning.
Good morning. Well, America is often seen as the leader of the NATO military alliance, which was originally founded to counter Russian power in Europe. Today, President Trump will urge them to focus more on counterterrorism. Thousands demonstrated against President Trump's arrival in Brussels, a city he once described as a hellhole. Protesters unveiled an unwelcome message nearby the U.S. Embassy. In the wake of the Manchester attack, NATO plans to formally join the Obama-era coalition against ISIS. Counterterrorism has been a theme throughout Mr. Trump's trip.
I repeat again that we must drive out the terrorists and the extremists from our midst. Obliterate this evil ideology.
We will agree to establish a new terrorism intelligence cell here at NATO headquarters, improving how we share intelligence, including on foreign fighters.
The president is also requesting more NATO forces join the roughly 8,400 U.S. troops in Afghanistan. Mr. Trump and his closest advisors are still debating the Pentagon's recommendation to expand the U.S. role and add up to 5,000 U.S. troops. Trump administration officials say they are still a couple of weeks away when it comes to that decision on the U.S. role in Afghanistan, a 16-year conflict that's already America's longest war. Gail, President Trump flies tonight for more meetings with world leaders at the G7 summit in Sicily.
One of the alliance's U.S. commanders continues to claim Russia is supporting the Taliban in Afghanistan.
The Russian involvement this year has become more difficult. We continue to get reports of this assistance, and of course we had the overt legitimacy lent to the Taliban by the Russians.
I have not seen real physical evidence of weapons or money being transferred.
We have seen reports, but we haven't seen any, what should I say, final proof of direct support from Russia to Taliban.
Washington realizes now that a lot of the public and nations across the world are now looking to Russia, understanding that Russia has a greater role to play moving forward. And I think that America is not very happy about this. And so it's trying again to present Russia as being, a nefarious agent, as a scapegoat, because it's trying to justify and rationalize its own laggings in Afghanistan and the fact that for over 15 years now.
Well, the use of American air power in Afghanistan has sharply increased as military officials press U.S. President Donald Trump to send thousands more troops to the country. According to new statistics, U.S. warplanes dropped more weapons on Afghanistan in April than in any other single month since 2012. The U.S. Air Force unleashed 460 bombs, missiles, or other ordnance last month in Afghanistan. The figure is more than 7 times compared to April last year.
Sounds of heavy machine gun fire rattles peaceful woods near Jõhvi in Estonia. U.S. soldiers disembark their badly fighting vehicles, repel an ambush and scan the forest, searching for remaining attackers. This is only a part of a 3-week military exercise taking place just a few dozen kilometers from the Russian border. About 9,000 NATO troops are taking part in the war games, including Germans with their infantry fighting vehicles. In Estonia, a country where more than 30% of the population speaks Russian, these scenes could feel intimidating to some. Some Estonian politicians say that if the new Cold War were to get hot, local Russians would side with their roots.
Russians are Russians and they remain Russians, and if Putin really or someone else of Russian leaders would call them, I would think they, not all probably, but many of them will follow.
While few are predicting full-scale war, the tensions and the conflict are real. Some of the closest and arguably most potentially dangerous encounters are happening in the airspace above the Baltic Sea. This is daily occurrence for the Spanish squadron of F-18s which arrived in this airbase just a few weeks ago. They're heading to patrol the skies over the Baltic and intercept Russian planes which are doing just the same. A cat and mouse game only played using very expensive toys.
U.S. officials said on Wednesday a U.S. Navy warship sailed within 12 nautical miles of an artificial island built up by China in the South China Sea. It is the first such challenge to Beijing in the strategic waterway since U.S. President Donald Trump took office. Speaking on condition of anonymity, the officials said the USS Dewey traveled close to the Mischief Reef in the Spratly Islands. It is among a string of islets, reefs, and shoals over which China has territorial disputes with its neighbors. The so-called freedom of navigation operation is sure to anger China. It comes as Trump is seeking Beijing's cooperation to rein in ally North Korea's nuclear and missile programs.
China has driven out a U.S. naval destroyer out of the South China Sea after it illegally entered Chinese territorial waters. Defense Ministry spokesperson Colonel Ron Guo-chung said the USS Dewey entered Chinese territory on Thursday without government permission. The Chinese Navy's Liu Zhou frigate drove out the Dewey from the area. He said China is opposed to such moves and has already lodged a representation with Washington. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Lu Kang said China respects lawful freedom of navigation but is opposed to any country harming China's sovereignty and national security. He said China has urged the US to refrain from further patrols, saying such actions could cause unexpected air and sea accidents.
Fars news agency has quoted a senior commander of the elite Revolutionary Guard as saying that Iran has built a third underground ballistic missile production factory and will keep developing its missile program. Reuters has reported that the development is likely to fuel tensions with the United States. Since going on his first foreign trip, President Donald Trump has called Iran a sponsor of militant groups and a threat to countries across the Middle East. Fars quoted Amir Ali Hajizadeh, head of the Guard's airspace division, as saying, "Iran's third underground factory has been built by the Guards in recent years. We will continue to further develop our missile capabilities forcefully."
North Korea has blasted U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson over his recent comments that Washington was not seeking a regime change in Pyongyang. The North described Tillerson's remarks as a childish act of deception and said they would continue in their pursuit of acquiring a powerful nuclear deterrent. Tillerson said last week the Trump administration was not looking to invade North Korea nor topple its regime. His remarks have fueled speculation that Washington may be moving towards engagement and dialogue with the North following months of hawkish rhetoric.
U.S. Secretary of the Treasury Steven Mnuchin says Washington will use everything in its power to put more sanctions on North Korea, Iran, and Syria. He made the pledge during a House Ways and Means Committee hearing on Wednesday, saying it was to protect American lives. Mnuchin added he's in talks with President Trump on the matter. At the end of March, the Treasury Department slapped sanctions on one North Korean entity and 11 individuals for their links to the regime's nuclear and missile programs.
Meanwhile, President Donald Trump reportedly told President Rodrigo Duterte of the Philippines last month that the U.S. had 2 nuclear submarines stationed in waters off the Korean peninsula. According to a leaked transcript of a phone call between the 2 leaders, Trump told Duterte that Washington had a lot of firepower in the region, including 2 nuclear submarines. In late April, the American submarine USS Michigan joined aircraft carrier USS Carl Vinson in Korean waters as a show of force against Pyongyang.
Troops in the Philippines have begun an operation to rid a southern city besieged by Islamist militants. Heavy fighting erupted after the rebels seized large parts of Marawi and set fire to several buildings as they battled government forces, prompting authorities to declare martial law. The Maute guerrillas, who are linked to the Islamic State group, have also taken Christians hostages and set free more than 100 prisoners from 2 jails. The battle started on Tuesday following a failed bid by security forces to arrest some Maute fighters. Thousands of people who fled the fighting are now holed up in makeshift shelters. Authorities believe some of the militants they're hunting could be hiding among the evacuees. According to the army, at least 7 soldiers and 13 militants have been killed since Tuesday, and the fate and whereabouts of the hostages remain unclear.
The aftermath of 2 deadly explosions in Indonesia. Police on high alert in the capital of Jakarta after 2 suspected suicide bombers let off twin bombs on Wednesday night, killing 3 police officers and injuring 10 others. The blasts went off 5 minutes apart near a bus station in the city's east. Police say the officers were on duty at a parade when the bombs hit. The explosions appeared to have been packed into pressure cookers.
I was under the flyover bridge when suddenly I heard a very loud explosion and people started running out from the bus stop. People were panicking and cars and motorcycles were sounding their horns at each other. I tried to pull over and saw people exhausted from running and heard a bomb had exploded.
The Muslim-majority country has been the target of a series of attacks by Islamic State sympathisers in the past 18 months, though the motive for Wednesday's attack is currently unclear. Authorities are increasingly worried about a surge in radicalism, driven partly by a new generation of militants. About 400 Indonesians are believed to have joined IS in Syria, and there are fears they could pose a more lethal threat if they return home.
Chinese couple were kidnapped by unknown gunmen in Pakistan. The kidnappers forced the abductees into a vehicle at gunpoint and drove away at about midday on Wednesday. The 2 were studying Urdu at a language center. Initially, 3 Chinese were taken, but 1 managed to escape as the kidnappers began firing in the air to scare off onlookers. And a passerby was injured in a shootout while trying to prevent the abduction. And the Chinese embassy confirmed the kidnapping and said that they are working towards the release of the couple. Local police have been deployed at all entry and exit points of the city to perform checks. No group has yet claimed responsibility for the kidnapping.
A murder in the digital age. The killing of Mashal Khan, captured and posted online by his fellow students. He was lynched after being falsely accused of blasphemy on Facebook.
In Pakistan, any content insulting Islam and its Prophet Muhammad is considered blasphemous and is punishable by law.
Since it's not clear exactly what constitutes as blasphemy, critics say it has become a tool to silence dissent. They point to the 2016 cybercrimes law as proof. Then there is the recent implementation of the Pakistan Electronic Media Regulatory Authority, or PEMRA ordinance.
Its vague language with regards to preserving the ideology of Pakistan has been used to silence criticism of the state, according to critics.
And now, Pakistan's government has detained social media activists for what it says was an organized campaign against the armed forces. The government and supporters of the measures say they are an essential requirement in the digital age, but thousands of blocked websites and dozens of silenced bloggers disagree.
There is breaking news on several fronts. The raid's underway after the terror attack at a concert. Tonight, the bomber, what we've learned, and was his brother about to bomb again? Heavily armed police teams raiding several sites around Manchester today, now in a race to uncover a hidden network. And tonight we have new images of pieces of the bomb itself and what they reveal.
Tonight, those crime scene photos obtained by the New York Times and posted on their website reveal the bomb's sophisticated design. The possible detonator bloodied, carried in the suspect's left hand, investigators believe, with a small circuit board soldered inside and a protruding red wire. A mangled 12-volt battery, more powerful than those seen in most suicide bombs. Nuts and screws used as deadly shrapnel. And part of the blue Caramore backpack the bomb was carried in. Investigators now concluding that this bomber was no lone wolf.
I think it's very clear that this is a network that we are investigating.
Whoa! This morning, police stormed a building in central Manchester, targeting a third-floor apartment. Neighbors told us they thought it was being rented as an Airbnb unit.
And you can't know who everybody is.
Police carried out raids in the Russian capital this morning with 4 suspected members of Islamic State arrested. It's believed they were planning to carry out terror attacks in Moscow.
Yeah, we hear from the Russian Federal Security Service known as FSB that 4 members of a terrorist group reportedly under ISIL umbrella have been detained here in the Russian capital earlier on Thursday. It is believed that the group has been preparing terror attacks on Moscow public transportation system. In the flat that the 4 detainees have been renting, they are citizens of Russia and Central Asia. The Federal Security Services have also discovered, as we read in the report, a laboratory for explosive devices production, as well as 1 ready-to-go homemade bomb and extremist brochures and books.
Islamic State releasing a new propaganda video showing the Las Vegas Strip. And officials there say they're treating it as a credible threat. A group that monitors extremist propaganda released a statement a segment of the video, which calls for people to carry out lone wolf terror attacks in the United States using knives or vehicles. The video shows landmarks in Las Vegas and other major U.S. cities. Police in Vegas said they're taking the threat seriously. I mean, what else is they going to do? And that they're stepping up security as they prepare for a very busy Memorial Day weekend. We don't show these propaganda videos, and we won't, but Trace Gallagher with more of the details. What else do we know about this thing?
Well, Shep, it was apparently narrated by an American jihadist, and when he calls on ISIS sympathizers to attack targets in Russia, Europe, and America, it shows video of the Las Vegas Strip, including places like the Bellagio Hotel. Investigators say they believe the video is somewhere back in 2015, but they say it would be irresponsible to dismiss the threat, especially in the wake of the Manchester Arena attack and the fact that Vegas is a big event destination replete with nightclubs, concert venues, and thousands of people walking around at any given moment. And when you have this ISIS propaganda video, along with last week's warning from Homeland Security calling this the most serious threat environment since 9/11, it tends to get people's attention.
To combat terrorism, the TSA says it is testing new procedures for carry-ons. Maria Villarreal is at LAX.
Airport travelers now have to take off their shoes, remove their laptops and liquids over 3.4 ounces. But get ready to declutter your carry-ons even more. At some airports around the country, add this to the list. Items like food, paper, and additional electronics bigger than a cell phone may soon have to be placed in a separate bin. The TSA has quietly been testing this at several small airports, now expanding to larger ones like LA International, Boston, and Fort Lauderdale. The TSA says it wants to eliminate false positives that occur when items like wires and phones can look like weapons, and that screeners can't often tell what's in overstuffed bags.
I don't think it's going to streamline the process.
Marshall McLean is an expert on airport security and says what's needed is more police, not more screening.
To truly have something to deter, you're still going to have armed police officers to do that, rather than worried about whether people have too many papers in their luggage.
The U.S. Army lost track of more than $1 billion worth of military equipment and weapons sent to Iraq and Kuwait. That information comes from a now declassified Department of Defense audit from 2016 that was obtained by Amnesty International. The audit itself did not contain specifics about what equipment is unaccounted for, but the rights group reports tens of thousands of assault rifles and hundreds of Humvees are missing. The weapons and equipment were meant to be provided to the Iraqi military and Kurdish forces through the Department of Defense's Iraq Train and Equip Fund. The fund was created in fiscal year 2015, and Congress initially appropriated $1.6 billion for it. Almost another $1 billion is supposed to be added to the fund this year. But the audit revealed management kept incomplete records of what was being transferred by using multiple spreadsheets and handwritten receipts, so it's unknown if the specific weapons and equipment were actually given to the Iraqi armed forces. The U.S. military has already started to correct its accountability process, according to the audit.
The independence of Kurdish Iraq is just a matter of time. At least that's the message from the head of the U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency. The announcement comes just weeks after Iraq's Kurds announced plans to hold an independence referendum later this year once Islamic State is defeated.
Kurdish independence is on a trajectory where it is probably not if, but when.
We look at the map of the world, we can see only the state of Israel that are keen on having a very active relationship with Kurdistan in Iraq and are very keen to see an independent Kurdistan, a Kurdish state in northern Iraq. Therefore, we do believe that the Americans would play whatever card the Israelis will put forward. And the Americans, within their interest to have a pro-Israeli ally within the north of Iraq, on their neighboring the state of Iran, and on the south of Turkey, and of course north of the state of Iraq. So from the geopolitical point of view, it is very beneficial for the Americans to have an ally and maybe advanced military stations or bases inside Kurdistan.
Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu has some strong words about Israeli sovereignty over Jerusalem. Speaking in the Knesset today in a special Jerusalem Day session, he's proclaimed that over the years, Jerusalem was only our national capital and no one else's. He's describing the pre-1967 division of the city as a black cloud over Jerusalem. Netanyahu promises that the Temple Mount and Western Wall will stay under Israeli sovereignty forever. The Prime Minister is also applauding the U.S. President Donald Trump's visit to the Western Wall, which he is saying destroyed UNESCO's false propaganda in one fell swoop. In 2016, UNESCO passed a resolution referring to Jerusalem as Al-Quds and referring to the Western Wall as the Al-Buraq Plaza. Although the Western Wall and the Temple Mount are both under Israeli political sovereignty, the Temple Mount is administered by the Jordanian Islamic Waqf. Many in Netanyahu's coalition are not happy with the ban on Jewish prayer on the Temple Mount. An Arabic newspaper is reporting that U.S. President Donald Trump will announce a new peace initiative within a month. Al-Hayat, quoting a senior source, says that Trump's team is still developing the new framework, which will set a time limit for talks with the Israelis and Palestinians to negotiate over core issues. The source says that Trump wants a separate agreement on each issue, hoping to eventually reach the big deal.
A round of storms battered southeastern states Wednesday, including North Carolina, where a school gym was hit hard. A reported tornado hit the elementary school gym in Yadkin County, knocking out 2 walls and blowing off much of the roof. Several temporary classrooms were damaged. The storm tracked through Yadkin and Stokes County for more than an hour. The tornadic supercell continued into south central Virginia. A reported tornado damaged 4 homes in Newberry, South Carolina, and here in Ohio, several tornadoes were reported.
Look at that tornado.
While most of the world obsesses over fidget spinners, Kiba, an 18-month-old Shiba Inu, has no problem expressing her dislike for the craze. The dog and toy duked it out to see who could win more affection in their family's household. As Kiba's owner places the spinner on the ground, the pup prepares for battle. It's clear that while Kiba may be bigger, she's not about to let the toy out of her sight. Both opponents start off strong in the next round. Kiba even daring to creep closer before making her move. But the fidget spinner slows down, throwing her off. It's not clear who won the battle, but they'll be living in the same house, so they better start getting along.